opportunity to have temporary stacks as we were fixing the main stack. And that approval was given. On the back of that approval, like I said, the expectation is that we must be able to keep to our promise of ensuring that they were relinquishing the temporary stacks. We go back to the main stack. Remember, the key issue there is to ensure that we are able to reduce the degradation to the air quality in the area of Kosile, and which has got impacts on the communities in that area. We have started that exercise. We removed from the temporary stack unit number 3, took a bit of time as we're then connecting it to the main stack. Again, on Saturday, the Saturday before yesterday, we took out unit number 2, that's 800 megawatts. We took it out from the temporary stack. We are going to connect it to the main stack. So it means that in addition to the 3,800 that we lost from Majuba and Medupi, and also what we lost at Camden in the early hours of this morning, there's that 800 megawatts that out of our own planning was taken out to ensure that we keep to our obligation in relation to the environment. And then the second intervention we had made in our quest to ensure that we are able to meet the licensing requirement associated with the life extension of Kubek unit number 1. We had, as a compliance issue, we had to take out Kubek to ensure that it gets to be refueled. Again, Kubek was taken out during the past week, so 980 megawatts. So if you put Kubek and Kusile, essentially we took out 1,600 megawatts really, in addition to the 3,800 megawatts that we have lost. So the point I'm making is that as part of this journey to ensure that we eliminate load shedding, we are going to ensure that we keep to our obligations in relation to the environment. We keep our obligations in relation to compliance as far as Kubek is concerned, so that which the national nuclear regulator has put before us gets to be met, and we are able to give confidence to the country that indeed we are moving in the right direction. And I want to say the following also, because I've had a number of inquiries, and ordinarily people will be calling, suggesting that there could be some underhand activity in relation to what is confronting us. I want to say to the rest of the country, the evidence that is before us is that this is a technical issue, and we are going to explain it. I'm making this point because we must not find any reason to manufacture explanations of why we are at stage 6 and point fingers somewhere else. We are the ones who bear the responsibility, and we are the ones who are going to illustrate to you how we are going to get out of this very difficult position. And I'm confident that by the end of the week, we should be out of this difficult situation. And of course, the CEO will also take you through what are the megawatts that we're expecting today, we're expecting tomorrow, the outlook going forward. We're confident we're going to go to conditions of normality. What are those conditions of normality by the end of the week? Is that there will not be load shedding. Would have gone through this wave, and of course we go to what we want the country to get accustomed to being normal, and in fact something called load shedding should be considered extremely abnormal, and that's why we're taking these extraordinary measures to share with you. So then, long and short of it, there is no sabotage on the basis of what is before us. We are able to explain what went wrong, and in fact it's something that we are addressing, and we'll share with you and the rest of the country what are those measures that we are taking. What is also of some degree of comfort, that even in a difficult situation, there's some degree of comfort. The first thing I want to mention is that these incidents, as the CEO will share with you, are not related to the main plant. When I say the main plant, the actual generation capacity of the unit. These are related to the balance of plant failure. And I'm not suggesting that we have neglected that area. Of course, from time to time we experience these failures. This is something that we have not anticipated. Mr. Ngumalo, as the head of generation in the team, they are looking at all aspects of generation. But I think the fundamental point to be made here, as the CEO will be explaining, is that not that the main plant is the balance of plant failure, and it'll be able to take you through what those failures are. We've been able to identify the root cause, and that's why we are taking the necessary actions for us to return these units, and some of these units have started returning. I want to say to the rest of the country that we'll continue to do everything possible, because we know that on account of National Treasury, the account of the Reserve Bank, and other reputable institutions globally, they've made the point that load shedding is a structural constraint to the South African economy. We want to eliminate load shedding as a structural constraint, and we are confident that the actions we have taken over the past 16 months are pointing us in the right direction. And we've accepted, like I said earlier on, that there are going to be moments of setbacks, and this is exactly that moment. We take full responsibility, we take full accountability. It doesn't only end there. We are sharing with you what are these steps that we are taking to address this situation. We will not deviate from the generation recovery plan. Like I said, there are inherent risks. We are doing everything possible to mitigate those inherent risks, but we are moving in the right direction. The levels of plant maintenance will continue to maintain them at proportions that are, in engineering terms, acceptable, but also helps us to get to a situation where we're able to eliminate load shedding in the shortest possible space of time and ensure that we achieve conditions of normality. So I'm just saying that this setback must not register on the part of the rest of the country that perhaps this is permanent. Like I said, this is momentary. We'll share with you how we come out of this situation, what the root causes are, how we are responding to those root causes, how many units have come back, what are the projections for the week, and also going forward. So we continue to be on the right path, and I think it's important that I underscore that statement. We continue to be on the right path. We get hit by these adverse headwinds. We had anticipated that these adverse headwinds are going to come. As and when they come, we have a response, and we'll share with you what that response is. So I'm making that assurance so that those who want to invest in the South African economy must continue to have the confidence that we have the ability to resolve this question. And in fact, load shedding is not a structural constraint. We are on the right path, like I said. 99% availability of electricity. We want to get to 100% availability of electricity. We want to eliminate load shedding. It's an experience that we're getting accustomed to. And like I said when I started, the agitation, the anger, and the disappointment that the country is registering again communicates another message that the team of Eskom has been doing phenomenally well, and the country has gotten to a stage where they should be, that we shouldn't accept load shedding. And when we experience this, of course, great levels of disappointment, whether it's stage 1, stage 3, stage 6, we should be disappointed with load shedding. Of course, stage 6 just aggravates the situation because the amount of hours that people don't have electricity. We want to give you that assurance that we are responding to that, and we'll share with you what the steps we are taking. We have understood the root cause. We are taking the necessary actions. We are moving in the right direction. As I conclude, it is this segment of my contribution, is that at all material points, we will never make expedient decisions at the cost of the grid, because the consequences will be, the ramification will be too ghastly to contemplate. And that's why it is important that to the degree that we need to initiate load shedding, understanding fully well that is going to deliver a message of an entity and a ministry that essentially is dropping the ball, but we are making the point that we will not make expedient decisions. We'll make decisions that are in the interest of the grid, and in the long term in the interest of the South African economy. And I give you the assurance that that point I always make consistently. The end of load shedding is within touching distance. Like I said before, we'll be synchronizing Kusile unit number 6. We had anticipated it by end of Feb. They've revised it the 9th of March. We'll bring back Medupi unit number 4 again end of March, beginning of April, an additional 1,600 megawatts. on top of what we have. Of course, the Mdntv one is what we lost, we are recovering. The Kusile one really is new capacity. I'm confident that we are moving in the right direction. I want to say to the rest of the country, you are going through pain, we understand your anger, we feel your pain, we can hear your cries. We will resolve this problem. Like I said before, we are confident about that situation. Let me invite the Group CEO just to take you through the more technical detailed nuances around what happened in Majuba, what happened at Camden, how are we responding to that, what constitutes the outlook going forward, how are we dealing with the issues of balance of plant, because I've made the point that this is not at the main plant, it's not your turbines, it's not about boiler tube leaks associated with a particular generating unit, but it's a shared infrastructure I'll share with you and how we'll be responding to that, and how in the long term, as Mr. Ngumalo and the team have been doing, is to ensure that we don't have repeat incidents of this nature in other power stations. Camden, much older, we'll go back to these stations of the same age, understand if there's no similar risk of this happening. We'll do the same with the generation of coal-fired power stations that are Majuba or of the same design. The experience that we have encountered now as a result of the failure, it doesn't get to repeat itself. Some of the best lessons get to be learned out of failure, and that's something that we are going to address. So I want to give you the assurance that the focus is both the main plant, if you like, the balance of plant, so that we're able to address the entire complex of generation. I'm confident, like I said, by the end of the week, we'll be out of this, and Mr. Marokano will share with you that level of detail. Okay.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to the viewers at home. I'm going to touch on the incidents relating to both the Majuba power station and Camden thereafter. I'll share with you what we have since done in terms of the thinking behind the stages of load shedding that we embarked upon. I'll give you an update in terms of the recovery overnight as per the plans that we had when we reviewed the situation at 8 o'clock last evening. Give you some update as at the assessment at 8 o'clock this morning, and hopefully give you a sense of where we are headed for the remainder of the day. Essentially, what really pushed us into the position that we found ourselves having to initiate load shedding at very short notice yesterday at 5:30 was the loss of multiple units at Majuba Power Station. This was occasioned by initially an overload on a transformer as a result of the startup of a unit that was coming out of a long-term outage. And that essentially started the domino effect of reticulation supply cutting to the rest of the units, and one by one those units gave in. It's essentially, as the Minister explains, more to do with the support of power to the compressors for both air systems in the units. We have understood the exact nature of how the event came about, and we are able to isolate it overnight and start addressing it. Of course, in the coming week, we'll be diving deeper into ensuring that from a system design perspective, we are able to contain such occurrences going forth. And we'll also assess where else the risk may be lying in our fleet. For Camden, we essentially had a failure on a hydraulic valve that then triggered us in a position where our cooling water pumps were not adequate for maintaining the requirements of the remainder of the units that were running, and so we lost them as well. This is an area where we've been doing some work. We have done some interventions last November, and we have plans to essentially address that adequately going forth. I just want to indicate that when we discovered the situation at Majuba yesterday, it also coincided with the trip at Mdntv. We can now confirm that that trip at Mdntv had to do with the under-frequency in the network overall that pushed that unit at Mdntv itself into a position where it tripped. So they are all interrelated to some extent. We do understand how it happened, as I said, and I'll give you an update in terms of the progress that we've made overnight. We had to take stage 3 load shedding to build and protect the demand and build the capacity for us to preserve the reserves, which we've been using quite extensively in the week. At 1 a.m., when the Camden situation unfolded, we had to escalate the level of load shedding because that meant that we had to run, we essentially were going to have to run the reserves much more harder. And that would have presented problems in terms of our recovery today and the recovery before the beginning of the week. Where are we now? Of the 10 units that we lost overnight, we have essentially returned about 6 units. In fact, as we're sitting here, another unit came through from Matimba. We've recovered just in excess of 3,200 megawatts or so of capacity overnight. We have 5 to 6 units that are planned to come back in operation during the course of today, and we'll take stock just after 8 o'clock this evening, after the evening peak. Our teams are very focused on returning these units. We have done the risk assessments in terms of our readiness to be able to get them back as late as this morning, at 8 o'clock, and we have sufficient requirements to bring them back online. Our focus is, as I said, maybe specifically at Majuba, where we lost these 5 units. We have already brought 2 of those units back by 6 o'clock this morning. 2 of those were back. Camden, where we lost units at 1 o'clock in the morning, 1 of them was already back by 6 o'clock this morning. We expect 2 more of Majuba units in the course of today, and in the next day or so we should have all of the power station units that are available back in operation, and we'll proceed up to Tuesday to bring the rest of the Camden units back in operation. I need to emphasize that both Majuba and Camden are actually, both of them are stations that have done very well in terms of their overall generation recovery performance. Up to the point where the incident happened, Majuba was running on average at about 68% EAF and Camden at 61%. So you can see that the work that we have done in actually driving operational recovery of these units substantially giving us good results. These are mainstay stations, essentially in terms of our corner points, and what we're dealing with here are electrical and control systems issues that we'll attend to, and I'm quite happy that the teams overnight could essentially deal with the diagnostics and isolate the areas of concern that enabled us to bring the units back already in place. So what are we looking for towards the rest of the week? As the Minister indicates, we anticipate to get out of the stage by the end of the week. With the recovery pace that we are experiencing thus far and anticipate for the rest of the day, we should be able to take a view around stepping down from the level of the stage 6 load shedding by tomorrow. And we will, on the basis of the actual recovery itself, make a call, and the recovery of our reserves, make a call in terms of how we step down stepwise to a point where we have post load shedding for the remainder of the week. So this week is very important. The first 3 days are quite crucial in our recovery program. We are encouraged by the overnight recovery. We are clear with the plans that needs to be delivered for the rest of today. We'll take stock this evening and do the assessments in terms of how we step down from that part. As I said, it's also important that as we recover units, we also build in margins for the recovery of the reserves, specifically the fuel at Ankerleg and also at the DISA and Avon APP OCGTs, and dealing with the rest of the water levels in the stations that are hydro schemes that we run. That's really where we are. Colleagues, our focus is really on getting the work. Our teams are hard at work. It's been a long night, but we're very grateful that, as always, they've come to the party, and everybody wants to see us getting out of the space. We continue to do our maintenance. It is at very high levels. It's the maintenance that we're doing now that allowed us to have very long runs throughout the intense period of demand in the winter. And again, where we are headed at the same time as doing maintenance is bringing additional capacity, the Kusile unit and bringing the Mdntv unit that will, going forth, gives us sufficient margins for incidents of this nature for us to be able to ride the storm. So we are really in the last parts of pulling together the benefits of these plans from a maintenance perspective and new capacity installations. So let me pause here and then we'll deal with the rest of the questions now. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Dan. Good morning to the members of the media and also good morning to the viewers at home. My name is Mdntv and I'm the chairman of Eskom. I also like to echo what the minister had said, that as the board of Eskom, we truly apologize for finding ourselves to be where we are right now, where we have to say that we are doing stage 6 of load shedding. Clearly, this is something that we are very disappointed. Ourselves were disappointed with what has happened, and it is something that, as the leadership of Eskom, we want to make sure that we minimize or eliminate going forward. So, just to take a step back and look at this board. This board was appointed in September 2022. As we were coming in as the board at that time, we took this responsibility with our eyes open. We knew that it was never going to be easy. You had South Africa that had experienced load shedding for a number of years, 10 years plus. So taking this responsibility was something that we always knew is not going to be easy. But we were always clear that it's something that is possible. It's something that we can overcome. Because we're dealing with people, we're dealing also with machines. Most of those are things that are within really our control. So it is because of this that we felt as the board coming in that we're going to be a different board. We're going to be a board that is engaged, a board that dirties its hands, so that when we're making decisions that are informed. The minister has indicated that in March 2023, we came up and had a plan called Generation Recovery Plan that was approved. It was approved by the board. It was a plan that was developed by management of Eskom. It came from the ground up, but it was also shaped by the board. So collectively, we own that plan. It's a plan that is guiding us. It's a 2-year recovery plan. So from March 2023, we have been executing that plan. At the core of that plan, what is it that is at the core? There's really, I would say, 3 things that are at the core of that plan. The first was making sure that we've got the right leaders to execute and implement this plan. So when we appointed in April 2023 Bheki Nxumalo as the head of generation, who in turn went ahead and made some changes within many of the power stations, it was part and parcel of making sure that we have the right leaders helping us to execute this plan. And also leaders that can create an environment where people look forward to coming to work and helping us to address the problems that we're facing in the different power stations. So we did that. The second element of this plan was to focus on what I call the basics. So one of the things that we saw as we were engaging, as we were visiting the power station, is that somehow we had deviated from the standard operating procedures. things were not always being done in line with how they should be done. So the key focus of Bheki, together with his leaders, was to make sure that we master those basics. So that was really the key element, the second element of the plan. And the third one, because we could not do everything at the same time, we had spread out over the 24 months of that 2-year plan, key actions that needed to be taken. So we had to make sure that there was discipline in doing the things that we said we were going to do. And that is exactly what has happened. The kind of performance that we saw, the fact that we had 10 months of no load shedding, that is not a miracle. It is as a result of the work and the effort that was done by the leaders within Eskom that helped us to be at that point. But I must say that the big focus of the Generation Recovery Plan was on the main plant. If you look now, when we look at it and we start to see where are we starting to have problems, we're starting to have problems in the auxiliary plant, in the electrical systems, in the water systems, in the steam systems. These are not part of the main plant that we have been focusing on. So this is really telling us that now we need to really put a lot of effort in making sure that these auxiliary plants are also at a perfect condition. So that is going to be the key focus of us going forward. And this is something that Dan, together with Bheki, have already started to work on. And want to make sure that we accelerate and also shift the resources, shift the funding to address this very important area as we start to see stability of the main plant. So those are the key elements that we have of the Generation Recovery Plan. So we have also a leader as in Dan, who came in March 2024 and has been able to provide the kind of leadership that this business needs. So what I'm saying here is that all what we need, we've got it. The minister has indicated that through his help, we were able to also manage to get the funding from National Treasury. All of these things are things that are within our control. Right now is to just focus on making sure that we do not, we understand that there's always going to be setbacks. Let's learn from those setbacks. So those setbacks have taught us now, looking back at what has been happening over the last 3 months or so, that the focus on the auxiliary plant is something that needs to be a priority of ours. And this is what we are doing. So as we execute on our Generation Recovery Plan, we have made a little bit of a pivot to integrate this additional element that I've spoken to you about. But the focus is we need to get out of a situation where we have to call you again and say that there's we are going to be announcing load shedding. We have to get to that point quickly. And the minister has indicated that we are at a touching distance from us getting to that point. And absolutely, this is exactly what we see as the board, because we have been executing the Generation Recovery Plan. Only a few items are left for us to complete. Once we get to that point, we will be coming here, the minister, myself, Dan, will be coming and informing everybody that load shedding is something that is behind us. But for now, the priority is that we need to make sure that by the end of this week, we get ourselves out of the load shedding. And that is what the team is focusing on, and that is our responsibility as the board to support them with whatever they need to get us to a point where we do not have load shedding by the end of the week. So with that, I'd like to also just hand back to Tsakani. Hand back to you, Tsakani. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Minister and the leadership at Eskom in the compliments of Mr. Mthethonyati and Mr. Dan Marukane. And with that, colleagues, I think we are now prepared to take questions. The panel will be more than happy to provide you with clarity to any questions that you may have. And therefore, we will start with any questions that are in the room before we go to those that are shared online. By a show of hands, colleagues, we can proceed with the session. And then, Takalani, you just go through the online questions after this round. So, the questions now. So, we've got our first hand there. Any other questions after that in the room? So, after you will go to Takalani. Please introduce yourself and the media house you represent.
So just a clarity question in terms of getting out of the load shedding stage that we're in. So the expectation, what I'm getting is the expectation is we shouldn't get major reductions, but sort of a gradual reduction is what we can expect of load shedding. And then the other question is, in terms of then this load shedding setback, what does that mean for the savings that Eskom was making in terms of diesel savings, usage of diesel? Does this have any sort of impact on that? Thank you.
Takalani?
Thank you, Tsakani, and apologies. We do not have the mics today, but I think I will be audible enough, colleagues. The first two questions that we have are coming from Chris Yelland from Business Intelligence. The first one is, please can you advise whether Quebec Unit 1 has gone offline yet, and if not, when is it expected to go offline, and when it is scheduled to come back online again? The second question, please can you advise whether the return to service of the flue gas plant at Kusile Units 1, 2, and 3, the placing into commercial service of Kusile Unit 6, and the return to service of Unit 4 is all on track without any further delays. And we have a question from Noro from Fullview. The question is, the latest national electricity plan is financial and viable. Is it not time to withdraw it and replace it with a realistic plan based on open source modeling, and such should not emerge behind closed doors? And we have Helena from News 24. Please can you explain in more detail what happened at Majuma, and also how it triggered the Mdntv outage? And could you also please provide details about the compliance issue that affected Quebec output this week? Thanks.
Thanks, Takalani. From these questions, I think Mr. Ngumad has got a lot to answer to. And I think there's one question that perhaps the CFO can respond to as well. Thanks.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I will talk to some of the questions that have been raised. Obviously, our first prize on diesel, Nosipo, is for us is to save diesel. So once we start running more on diesel, it shows that we are not in the right space. But obviously, before load shedding, that is also the cheaper option that we will go for. So diesel, we will use it in that context as well. So I think overall, this year, we are still on the savings positions compared to where we were last year. I think the issue with Chris Yelland in terms of Quebec 1 is already off. I think we've communicated that as well in our weekly media statement. It came off last weekend, so it is currently undergoing preparation for the work of what we need to do. I think also what was meant, there is not a compliance issue. You will recall that when this license comes, there is things that we also need to do as the power station. So there is projects that we are doing on. It's not just a normal refueling. Normal refueling take about 80 days. You will see this outage. It's actually just over 150 days, because there is some projects as part of the long-term operations that we are implementing at Quebec as well. Kusile, in terms of the returning to the normal stack, we have also communicated the first unit was Unit 3, which we took off in December. That unit is back in operation now, running on the normal stack. The second unit is Unit 2 that we've taken off last week. We'll come back next month, and then we'll take off Unit 1. And then Unit 1 we took last because it also coincided with its own outages. The other two units are more for compliance with our license conditions. So as such, we will ensure that these units, there will be no unit running on the temporary stack post 31st March at Kusile. So that's a commitment we've made, and that's what also the minister and then we're talking to say we will not compromise on those ones, even if it's a tough calls that we have to make. Kusile Unit 6, we are at the final stages of commissioning. Obviously, there is a lot of issues. The minister indicated that the current date now is about 8, 9. So we are planning beginning of next month to run up the turbines for the first time. So we currently, and then obviously as we run these machines for the first time, there's issues, but the current plan shows us by the 9th of March we should be getting to full speed on that. Before that, then there's 5 days at 3,000 megawatts where we're doing the grid code compliance as well. So that is an intense test of the unit to make sure that it's grid compliance. So that will take about 5 days from the 4th of March. Before, we are also in progress there with a lot of work that is happening there. Still pushing for end of March by mid-April. Again, we are also in the commissioning of most of the plants, so the key plants we are still focusing to deal with that. Okay, the electricity plan, I will leave that one to the minister. I think I've covered the issue of gradual. I think the Group CE did indicate that we will make a call from tomorrow. Obviously, how it goes towards the end of the week, that's what we are aiming for. Obviously, how it would build down, but first is to deal with the stage 6. As the units are returning, then we'll meet again tonight and then early tomorrow morning, and then we'll make those calls as well. Yeah. The other question, I didn't get it for the energy viability.
They also asked for a little bit more detail on the Majuba incident.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, let me talk to the Majuba incident. Like, I'm not too sure how details I can get, but just to give you the fact that in terms of the stations, you normally, in terms of the electrical reticulations, you will divide it into two. There's odd units, which is 1, 3, and 5, and then 2, 4, 6. Normally our 6 per station. So one of the 3 units between 1, 2, and 3 will supply all the auxiliaries of the stations. So through the other ports, because we normally say the units supply themselves, but one of them need to supply the rest of the auxiliaries or half of the auxiliaries of the station. So in this case, Unit 1 was supplying itself, and then it's also supplying all the other auxiliaries, including those of Unit 5. And that's the unit that was being commissioned, Unit 5. When we started the motors, obviously these are big motors. They draw high current, so it then resulted onto the tripping of the unit transformer on Unit 1 that came off. But because Unit 1 was also supplying the other auxiliaries on auxiliary plant. Then you subsequently then lost those boards, and then you lost those auxiliaries, especially the cooling pumps and some of the compressors that were supplied by that unit which was supplying the loop. So with the loss of the cooling pumps, then the unit was still running high, then you ended up losing the other units on vacuum. That was unit 5, 4 and 6, because the cooling was not sufficient. So that was the initial incident. And then obviously you, in that process at Majuba, the chair and then talk about focus on the auxiliary plant. We started to do some work as well. Unit 1 itself, in terms of the compressors, is currently under refurbishment and upgrade, so is Unit 3. So it means that Majuba, you were running on the, we've got auxiliary compressors, but because of this trip, they were also affected. So they couldn't supply enough air to the rest of the control systems on the unit that remain on load, which is the Unit 2 and 3, which then subsequently tripped because of the low supply of compressors as well. So we are busy with an upgrade project there. We will try and speed it up. There were contingencies made as well to hire some of them, but it means then that the operator need to run and start them manually. But when you lose the whole station, things are not normally working because you've got only the operating on site. So that's one thing that we will look at. It is always the risk, the outside plant, because of this common system. So when you lose such a big machines as well, that's almost 3,000 at almost the same time, then the frequency in the network, you will have an under frequency incident. So that most of the units in most stations, we are able to ride through that. But at Petupi, during that same time, they were having some higher temperatures that they needed to deal with it on the motors, on the boilers. That's what then caused them to trip when it sees that low frequency incident. So hence it could come back quickly. So that's how really the incident of Majuba became the cascading event. So we've been working through the night to bring those units. I mean, the third unit just came back now as we are sitting, as Dennis said. So we are almost getting back to normality at Majuba. I think I'll cover. Thank you.
Just the question on what they refer to as the National Electricity Plan. I'm not familiar with the plan. I make the assumption that the question really is around the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan, which articulate an overarching, if you like, strategy on how we're going to support the electricity demand in the country. That process was not done behind closed doors. It was a democratic program rather. It was in the public domain for a period of over a year, and I've in fact extended that as a minister and asked that we have engagements with those who have made substantive contributions, critiques in relation to the original IRP, the draft that went out for public consultation. So we overextended ourselves, and as I speak to you now, it's at NETLEC to get input from the partners, being business, labor, and community. And once it's done at the NETLEC, it then goes to cabinet for approval, and then from there it becomes a public document. That's the only plan I can think of. The integrated energy plan, I'd made the point before that it's something that we're still working on. Of course, ideally we should have started with an integrated energy plan anchored by the IRP, the gas master plan, the liquid fuels master plan, but we started it the other way. We don't think that there's a harm in that. It's a dynamic process. So the gas master plan again is going through a process of consultations, and there we think that there could be substantive revisions. And the liquid fuels master plan is a plan that is driven by Minister Mantashe, and I think that at the right time he'll make that announcement public on how far the process is. But I must say that on all of these plans that are within our domain, they are subjected to public consultation. I did make the point when I started that it's important that we were able to subject this plan to a more robust, substantive, and thoroughgoing engagement, because we can only benefit from the critique and the multiplicity of views of people who want to make contributions. And we have seen with the IRP, at least that version that has gone to NetLeg, that those contributions were particularly helpful on areas that we had understated, areas that they did not receive full attention. I think the experts and just the general public raised the issues, and we're able to the extent that is possible, to accommodate those areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Minister and Mr. Ngumalo for the clarity. Colleagues, in the interest of public interest, we'll take another round of questions. This will be our final round of questions. So are there any follow-ups and any further questions online? There is a hand there. Any other hands in the room before we go to Takalani? So there's just one. Takalani, please, you'll follow the lady with the online questions.
Can I go?
Yes, please.
Joyce Summers from Pipeline. It's slightly off topic, but not really. Especially in the light of the stage 6 load shedding. I've got two questions. The one is, will South African consumers be paying more for electricity with the change over to some of these tariffs and some of those fixed costs? And the other thing is that the solar guys are getting very hot under the collar about the registration costs and some of the new fixed costs that they are having to cough up for going forward. And can we please get a response from Eskom about that? Thanks.
Thank you. Takalani?
No, thanks, Sakani. The last three questions from online, one is coming from Chris Evan, and the question is, please advise on how many units went down and what total megawatts was lost at Comden. Was the whole station lost? And the following question is from Helmo Cruz from Independent Media. And the question is, please explain what the frequency problem was. I'm not sure, because it didn't make a reference to anything, but that was just a question in brief. And the last question is again coming from Chris Evans. The question is it possible for the minister to give residents and businesses in Johannesburg an indication of the outcome of the Sanedi report and the way forward in respect of the billing dispute between Eskom Distribution, City Power, and the City of Johannesburg? Thank you.
Thank you, Takalani. I think we will start. I don't know if the CFO will be able to. Okay.
Thanks. With regard to the NERSA's decision on the retail tariff restructuring that has just come out, effectively what has to happen now, and if they publish the electricity retail tariffs for comments, you take the decision of the MYPD6 in the first year, the 12.7, you take that component of that average increase plus the tariff restructuring. The combination of those two gives rise to the electricity retail tariffs that's out for comment. But ultimately the intention is, through the tariffs and the NERSA decision on the revenue, you should be reconciling back to that total allowable revenue. So from an Eskom perspective, the intention of the mechanism is to get back to the allowable revenue that was determined by NERSA in terms of those amounts per the MYPD6. And then once NERSA has received the comments on the ERTSA, they would make a decision. The intention is to have that decision early in March, so to enable us through the Minister to table in Parliament by the 15th of March. but the intention is not to over-recover and reconcile back to the allowable revenue. In the event that we over-recover, in subsequent RCAs, we'll give that back to the consumer. But I think the message is also clear. As we changing the industry, it's important that the tariffs do reflect the changes in the industry, which also requires elements of fixed charges to be introduced into our tariff restructuring mechanisms. Thanks.
Maybe just dealing with Chris's question, Beggy's already explained that the frequency issue at Medupi, I think it's Helmut's question, the frequency issue at Medupi was related to the under-frequency overall in the network. And because that unit at Medupi was already running some high temperatures, it got pushed over its upper limit trips. Again, we've understood that, and that's since been corrected. We lost 4 units altogether at Camden. 2 were out for the ordinary maintenance, long-term maintenance. As I said, we've already recovered 1 of those units, and we're in the process of recovering the rest. I think one point to emphasize with regards to the pricing, retail pricing structure that we have proposed, and NESA is in its final stage of consideration, is that it will make consumers pay for what they are responsible for in terms of the upkeep of the net, but more importantly, the solar users will then will be able to do what is called net billing in terms of being able to be credited for their own production into the system when they have excess system coming through. So it's a win here for the solar users themselves. The last question, of course, has to do with the Sanedi report, and I'll leave that to the Minister.
The solar, the registration costs.
The registration costs of the solar, they were published, and there's also a dispensation for the registration that happens before the end of March, where users in a particular category will be able to register with no cost. That's been published quite well on our website, and I encourage people to look at it.
No, Chris, on the Sanedi, you are absolutely correct. I think maybe just a bit of context, and you do share that context in your question, is that we had initiated this discussion out of, or rather this process out of an impasse between Eskom and Johannesburg, and that impasse had to do with the billing. So the city of Johannesburg was of the view that there's incorrect billing on the side of Eskom in relation to their bulk purchases, and Eskom was raising the issue that there's a debt that City Power is not meeting, and City Power is disputing that on the basis of their contention that there were issues around billing inaccuracies. Then we agreed on the process to be adjudicated by a neutral player, and that neutral player is Sanedi, one of the SOE's outfits within the rank of the ministry. They have run that process, Chris. I must say that it was robust, and it also revealed other significant areas of attention, which areas I was of the view that needed to be socialized with both Eskom and City Power. It was also able to make findings on the part of Eskom that needed attention, and also findings on the part of City of Johannesburg in the form of City Power that required to be remedied. And then on the back of that, the parties then went back to Sanedi and say this is how they propose to deal with the matter. So it's taken us significantly more than the 2 weeks that we had suggested for ourselves or set for ourselves. Now it's close to 3 months, and I was making the point that it was 3 months well spent because some of these issues are transversal, and I think that it gives us an opportunity to ensure that even before other municipalities or Eskom gets to dispute or raise these issues in the public domain, now on the basis of this report we have been able to anticipate them, and we are finding ways of addressing them. But going back to Johannesburg, I must say that they've been trying all their best to keep up with the current account. And of course, that report has been made available to them. The technical teams have been meeting. They are going to bring that the entire report, including the actions of the two parties, Eskom and City Power, on what constitutes the best way forward. And it's upon receipt of that I'll share with you. I mean, in the same manner that we had announced the process, I'll come public and say this is how we are resolving the Johannesburg Eskom situation. And like I said, for those issues that are transversal, that could manifest themselves in other municipalities, I'll also give a sense of how we're going to deal with them. But the long and short of it is that we will be coming back to the public on how we are settling the dispute between City Power and Eskom. And I want really to take the opportunity to just thank everyone for making time coming here. Like I said when I started, a very difficult day, and I give you the assurance that as the group CEO was saying, as the chair, Dr. Mteto was saying, I think this leadership has done remarkably well. The fact that the units are beginning to return, thanks to Mr. Numalo, the coalface, Mr. Marukani, just marshalling the team and the stewardship of Dr. Mteto and his a very competent board will be able to resolve this situation. So I must say that in the light of this hardship, in the light of this setback, I think there's a temptation for the rest of the country to think that if we are veering off course, I want to give you the assurance that we remain on course, driving that generation recovery plan as adopted by the Eskom board 2023 in March, which supports the energy action plan that the President unveiled to the country. I must say, I want to emphasize, we remain on course. We have accounted for the risks that are inherent in some of the decisions that they were making, and we also have mitigation measures. And we do accept that in an instance of an outlier like this one, where the entire station goes out for reasons that Mr. Ngumalo and Marukane has explained, the domino effect in relation to other power stations, what happened in Camden, that constitutes an outlier. What is important is that we have been able to find out what the root cause is. The team is attending to that. Some of those units are back. As the chair of the board was saying, Dr. Mteto, again, attention gets to be given, if you like, on the balance of plant, so that we are able to address the entire value chain. So I want to say to the rest of the country, very difficult period, but we are going to get to a stage where load shedding is behind us. And like I said, we are giving the assurance that it's going to be, of course, the stage is reduced. As the leadership of Eskom has said, the technical team will meet tonight, take stock of where we're at. We are confident that the units are returning, making the next announcement of what constitutes the next stage. We'll do that subsequent days. The assurance I'm giving you that by the end of the week we'll be out of load shedding. And I'm confident that we are going to start another run. And hopefully this run will be permanent. At the point where myself, the leadership of Eskom, first the leadership of Eskom and myself are of the opinion that yes, indeed, we have addressed all the issues. We are confident about the statement we can make in public that load shedding is behind us. We will come and share with you that load shedding is behind us. And I want to repeat that there's no underhand. We are not suspecting any sabotage. On the basis of the evidence that is before us, we can explain what has happened. We are taking responsibility. We are going to fix it. Like I said, we are not going to manufacture reasons. We take full responsibility and accountability in the same manner that we bask in the glory of uninterrupted days of no load shedding and ultimately ending load shedding. When there are difficult moments, stage 6, I'm the minister, I bear that responsibility working with Eskom. So there's no other person but myself. The buck stops here, and that's why we have shared with you how we are going to respond. We have accepted that there will be these setbacks, and we'll do everything possible to address them. As I conclude, I want to repeat, load shedding is within touching distance. Watch this space, we'll come back to you and share with you these interventions, essentially the efficacy of the generation recovery plan, that all the risks that we can think of have been attended to, new generation capacity, will make that public. For now, we are starting once we end the week and the load shedding is gone, we're starting on another run, and hopefully this is the final run. And load shedding, we'll speak of load shedding in historic terms, an account of what once went wrong, and in fact this country has been able to correct it. And to those who are looking to invest in the country, I must say it's a setback. The investments are much needed. Myself and Eskom, the chair, will announce the next generation of new generation capacity. Private sector is coming on stream. I think we're in good space. As the SONA would have said, Show Minister Godongwane, when he retables the budget, take stock of this. It's important to support the budget that the minister will be announcing, because with the structural constraint, the ambition of 3% plus GDP growth during the term will not be possible. So we understand our responsibility. We will not cut corners, will not be expedient, will not mask any challenges, will come out and share with you what these challenges are, as is the case now, but most importantly, share with you how we're going to get out of this very difficult situation, a setback, unacceptable. We understand your anger, your disappointment, your grievance. We will resolve this. That's the assurance I want to give you. Thank you very much for attending. And thanks once more to members of the media for making it public for us, possible rather, for us to convey this message. Wish you a lovely Sunday and a blessed week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Minister and to the esteemed leadership from Eskom. With the Minister's closing, I think, colleagues, that marks the end of this media briefing, and indeed have a good Sunday further. Thanks.